The fastest plane at the time was almost entirely made of wood. The Wooden Wonder, the Timber Terror, and the Loping Lumber Yard were all nicknames for the same legendary aircraft, the de Havilland Mosquito. The Mosquito arrived in World War II late, but quickly broke speed records. It also had better aerodynamics and more advanced technology than its predecessors. None were more surprised than the Royal Air Force, which initially dismissed the idea of creating a life-size model aircraft for a real-life conflict. In an era when aircraft were heavily armored and weighed a lot, it seemed absurd to build a bomber with no guns. The Mosquito, on the other hand, would rely on its speed. The aircraft flew around Europe performing a variety of missions that no other aircraft could match in terms of variety and precision. It was also one of the first successful multi-role combat aircraft, with dozens of variants ranging from bomber to fighter to reconnaissance aircraft. Often, the best aircraft is the fastest, and the most radical ideas break speed records. Throughout the 1930s, Geoffrey de Havilland and his son were obsessed with creating the fastest aircraft possible. Their company had tried the civilian market for 2 decades and was not interested in dealing with the government. They wanted to build planes to get the job done, not to meet bureaucratic requirements. Only Air Marshal Sir Wilfrid Freeman believed in the family's vision. Freeman pushed the Mosquito so hard within the Royal Air Force that the project was dubbed Freeman's Folly. Early on, there was a lot of pushback against the project. The developers anticipated that the Mosquito would be the solution to the need for the Bomber Command. At a time when fighters faced speed limitations regardless of horsepower, lightweight wooden aircraft was a clever solution to increase speed. However, despite being faster than any of its contemporaries, an unarmed wooden bomber would be difficult to convince the British Air Ministry. The enemy was bound to respond by developing even faster fighters, and the Allies were up against technologically advanced opponents, the Germans, particularly with their Me-262 jet. The strongest bet was on conventional massive and heavily armed bombers, while radical designs of innovative lightweight aircraft were ruled out. However, de Havilland stayed true to his vision and focused on creating a low-cost, easy-to-build aircraft. The aircraft would have no guns or armor plating, relying solely on its 400 miles per hour speed, which was faster than anything at the time. It would also be powered by 2 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines and could carry up to 4,000 pounds of explosives. Given that wood was not a strategic material and was plentiful during the war effort, de Havilland was able to continue the project. Furthermore, the timber had structural properties similar to aluminum and steel, and there was a nation of woodworkers ready to help. Craftsmen from furniture factories and cabinet makers to luxury auto coach builders and piano makers were seamlessly transformed into subcontractors. Furthermore, wood is a millinery material that craftspeople were familiar with and found simple to work with. When exposed to a layer of doped fabric, it created a smooth surface with no rivets or seams. Furthermore, battle damage could be easily repaired on the battlefield. It was also a composite with the same strength and lightweight properties as carbon and graphite fiber materials. It, like modern composites, was made up of tiny fibers suspended in cellulose or polymer, resulting in a solid mixture. Like scale models, the airframe would be assembled with regular casing glue. However, a unique mixture was used to avoid plagues and wood in warm climates such as Southeast Asia. De Havilland was finally given permission to build the first prototype in September 1939, just as the war broke out in Europe. General Hap Arnold of the United States sent Mosquito blueprints to America in April of 1940. The concept was received by 5 manufacturers, all of whom were skeptical at best. The first prototype took to the skies in November of that year. It outperformed frontline fighters and remained the fastest for the next 2.5 years. The Air Ministry was so impressed that an order for 150 examples of the untested aircraft was placed by December. In September 1941, the Mosquito was operational. Its speed performance was exceptional, and it typically relied on altitude for evasive maneuvers. However, due to its power-to-weight ratio wind loading and NVMC of 172 miles per hour, it was not an easy aircraft to fly. Liftoff, NVMC engine failure could be fatal, so pilots learned to pull up 200 yards from the runway's end. The Royal Air Force eventually decided that the Mosquito was too valuable to let anyone fly it, and only the most experienced pilots and those with the best airmanship were permitted to do so. The concept eventually evolved into three distinct lines: bomber, fighter, and photo reconnaissance aircraft. The unarmed bomber with two crews flew a wide variety of missions in every theater of the war. Not only was it the most productive photo reconnaissance aircraft, but it was also a skilled fighter bomber and night fighter, later outfitted with an 8-gun nose battery. Later in the war, newer versions were equipped with a powerful cannon and 8 rockets. The Mosquito was also the war's most effective extreme low-altitude intruder. Furthermore, it was used as a decoy against the Luftwaffe in deception strategies. While many aircraft carried out these missions, none could complete them all. Thousands of routine bombing missions, particularly low-altitude missions, were flown by aircraft. These so-called nuisance raids were hit-and-run tactics, which the British media exploited and closely documented. The Mosquito was a frequent target in Germany's capital, and the missions were known as the Berlin Express. Mosquitoes bombarded the country's capital for 220 nights in a row at one point. A famous raid took place in January 1943 during the Nazi Party's 10th anniversary celebrations. At 11 a.m., 3 Mosquitoes arrived just in time to disrupt the radio transmission, causing chaos in the background. But Hermann Göring admired the British wooden aircraft. He said, "It makes me furious when I see the Mosquito. I turn green and yellow with envy the British, who can afford aluminum better than we can knock together a beautiful wooden aircraft." The Mosquito became a legend first and foremost for its pinpoint raids on Germans. Hundreds of French resistance fighters were imprisoned in Anya, northern France, by 1944. On February 19th, 200 men and women were scheduled to be executed, but the Allies would not allow it. Operation Jericho was a brilliant plan that was meticulously planned to bomb the prison's perimeter wall. The geography of the area, architecture, and scheduling were all correct. The bombing had to take place while the prisoners were in the yard and the guards were eating lunch. However, it was a risky strategy that could endanger the inmates. However, when resistance fighters learned of the plan, they were willing to risk their lives rather than be at the mercy of the Nazis. The pilots were briefed and informed of the plan that morning, which essentially involved breaching the walls and allowing the prisoners to escape. Another squadron was supposed to bomb the guards while they ate lunch, but the weather prevented them from taking off. Because of the impending execution, the brave pilots took off despite the bad weather and arrived at the building quickly. The Mosquitoes, flying at nearly 15 feet, hit and broke the walls, freeing 255 fighters and neutralizing 50 guards. Following the war, the Germans realized that the Royal Air Force could bomb any location in occupied Europe. That is the fascinating story of the world's fastest jet, the DH-98 Mosquito, which is surprisingly made of wood. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel to see even more incredible warplane documentaries.